everyone, this is Catherine O'Connell and welcome to Lawyer on Air. If you are looking for inspirational stories about women in law, then this is the podcast for you. Join me and my lawyer ladies as we enjoy a glass of wine after a hard day at work and talk about the world of women in law. I hope you will enjoy getting to know these amazing women who I am so proud to share a profession with. I'm glad you're here and I hope you enjoy the show. Hi everyone, welcome to the 7th episode in Season 2 of Lawyer on Air. I'm Catherine O'Connell. Today I am joined by Angela Yuen. Angela is based in Tokyo and she is the Deputy General Counsel for the award-winning legal group of JERA Co. Limited. JERA is the largest power generation company and largest LNG buyer in the world. JERA's business consists of the entire energy value chain and was created just 6 years ago in April 2015 by two of Japan's largest electrical utilities, GB Electric and Tokyo Electric. Angela is a corporate and international law specialist and is skilled at providing commercially focused and outcome-driven legal support and advice. She collaborates across multidisciplinary project teams to achieve business objectives, all the while building trust and fostering relationships at all levels across business functions and operations. Born and raised in Hong Kong, Angela studied in Australia at Queensland University of Technology to attain her BA in Law and Arts with honours in the year 2000. She was admitted as a solicitor of the Supreme Court of Queensland and the High Court of Australia in the same year. She is a graduate of the University of Melbourne Business School in Australia with a business administration and management qualification, which she attained in 2012. Angela moved to Japan out of a sense of adventure and professional curiosity, she says. And so I want to delve into that part of Angela's journey a little bit more in our conversation today. When Angela came to Japan, she started in in-house legal roles in the legal departments of two major and iconic Japanese trading houses, Sojitz Corporation and Mitsubishi Corporation. Her career then led her to global gold mining major Newcrest Mining, headquartered in Melbourne, and after a brief stint in Seoul, Korea, she returned to Tokyo in 2015, where she joined the law firm of Allen & Overy. In her current role, Angela oversees JERA's legal group, which advises the board of directors and leadership team and provides strategic legal support to JERA's domestic and international businesses, spanning the entire energy value chain. In 2020, Angela's legal group won the ALB Law Awards as the Innovative In-House Team of the Year. Angela speaks English, Japanese, and Cantonese, and she is passionate about supporting bold young female professionals to maximize their potential in leadership and to attain their highest professional goals. She has 3 gorgeous young children and believes that women can have it all, a fulfilling career and a healthy family. She excels as a lawyer extraordinaire while giving so much time to women in law Japan and as a mentor to others. Angela is indeed a wonderful example to listeners of the podcast of believing that you can have it all as a woman. And she really lives that mantra, having a fulfilling career and a healthy family. I'm really and truly pleased to bring you Angela as my guest today. Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for the intro. And I'm delighted and very honored to be invited on your award-winning podcast. So I must start by saying congratulations to both you and your producer, Jane, for your very recent award at the New Zealand Podcast Awards in the category of Best Podcast by Kiwi Abroad. I think it is a truly amazing achievement when you've really only rolled out a little over a dozen episodes in your season 2. So a huge congratulations. Well done.
Oh, Angela, thank you so much. That was unexpected that you would say that. I really appreciate it. And, you know, Jane and I are an amazing team together. I absolutely love and I'm going inverted commas around working together because it doesn't even feel like work. It's such joy, and we have a great time together. And I'm so thankful for you for saying that. That's really nice to start the conversation with.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And so today we're going to be talking about your wonderful career path, your work in Australia and Japan, and there's some part there that you had in Korea as well, and your current Deputy General Counsel role. I'm also interested in how the legal team at JERA is pioneering legal operations in Japan. And, of course, this award that you also won. And then because you're a passionate supporter of young professionals, I'd also love you to share your guidance for young lawyers and young professional females and how they can be bold and stride confidently along with their career path. So how does all of that sound?
Fabulous.
Okay, well, today we are talking online, and I do hope we can meet up in person very soon. But if we do, where would that be, Angela? Do you have a favourite wine bar or cafe or restaurant you love to go to? And what would you normally choose off the menu as your beverage of the day?
Well, there actually isn't anywhere in Tokyo that comes to mind that will quite fits the criteria, and because I would love somewhere with an uninterrupted view of the ocean and endless bottles of champagne to sit down with you, Catherine. But perhaps one place that I've always wanted to go back to is a little restaurant which was is still perched on a cliff in South Australia, just south of Adelaide, and it's called the Star of Greece. And my husband and I stopped there for dinner many years ago when we were touring the wine regions in South Australia, and just the images and the view from the restaurant looking out across St. Vincent's Bay towards Kangaroo Island is an image that has always stayed with me.
Oh, it sounds amazing. It really does. I think there's some places in Japan we can get a sea view, but you've got me immediately. My mind is going to South Australia because I have gorgeous friends who live there, and I'm thinking about that now. I want to go away and have a look at that. So it's Greek food. The Star of Greece is Greek food?
No, actually, it's modern Australian, but the name is very pretty, and that's why I remember it.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. Well, I'd love to go there. Maybe on my next journey to South Australia, I will put that in as a place to go to. Thank you so much. And I was also trying to think too, Angela, about when I first met you. And probably I heard about you a lot earlier than when I met you. I think you were working at Soljits in around 2006 to 2008, right?
Yes.
Yes. And I was working, I think at that time, or voluntarily at the Foreign Women Lawyers Association, but I think it might have been actually after that when you were at Mitsubishi Corporation that I was also at Mitsubishi's the sister company of Mitsubishi Motors. And I think that's when I may have heard about you first. I was on secondment from Hogan Lovells, and I think you were at Mitsubishi Corporation as well, maybe with one of Hogan Lovells' secondees. Yes.
That would be Simon Barrett, perhaps?
Yeah, it was Simon. That's right. Where is Simon? I have to call out to him and tag him on this when we send it out into the universe.
Working from Shimoda, I understand. We keep in touch.
Oh, great. I'll have to catch up with him. Thank you. But I think we didn't actually meet them, but I've heard about you over the years. And I think really the first time meeting you in person or meeting you over like we are now on the internet would be Women in Law Japan, XCOM.
Absolutely right.
Right. So I've known about you for a very long time, but actually getting to work with you in the way that we are now, it's really just been this year. And you're in the middle of organising a big panel event for Women in Law Japan, co-hosting with the Japan In-House Counsel Network on December the 16th, right? So thank you so much for being such a great supporter of also this podcast out there on the network. You've been doing that a lot, and I'm looking forward to this event that we're going to be doing together in December. So thank you so much. It's really amazing working with you.
No, the pleasure is all mine. I've always been very impressed. And again, of course, your reputation precedes you, and you just seem to be everywhere, know everybody. And so when I realized that you were presiding over the Women in Law Japan this year, I sort of reached out and through some connections managed to jump on board.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm really, you're starting off my week very, very nicely. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to delve into your career very shortly, but I do want to go back a little bit to your early days, which must be when you're in Hong Kong. Do you remember what you wanted to be when you were a child?
I think like every little girl, I wanted to be a teacher.
Yes. Yes. So did I. After being an air hostess, it was teacher. Wow. Okay. So you were in Hong Kong for how long before you came to Australia?
I was 9 when my family migrated to Queensland.
Oh, I see. What? And was that just a decision from the family through your mum and dad, or what happened to bring you to Australia?
Actually, it was a decision by mum and dad. As you know, there was a handover from Britain back to China coming up. And my father actually survived the Cultural Revolution and had been a refugee in China. So the fact that Hong Kong was going to be handed back over China really made him fear for our future, the family, the future of his children, because it's very difficult for him to get an education in China. So we had an auntie and an uncle in Australia at the time, and they were kind enough to sponsor us over.
Oh, I see. Thank you for sharing that. It's such a terrible time in your life then, I think, and uplifting from Hong Kong to come to Australia. When did, I guess, the aspect of law come into it? Did any of that background have an impact on you wanting to study law?
Looking back, I mean, there are a number of factors. I think we're a fairly traditional family, and I have an older brother. When we migrated to Australia, my parents are pretty much unskilled workers, even though my father previously held a high up managerial position in a corporate in Hong Kong. But because of the lack of English language capability, that we fell into what a lot of immigrants do, which is have a family-run Chinese takeaway. And that sustained our family, put us through school, high school. And so I think there was a lot of pressure probably pressure I put on myself to excel and to do well. And even if I'd wanted to be a journalist, which was something I did aspire to, it's not something that pays well, is what I'm told. And my brother and my sister both actually are in the medical field, and I'm very much the black sheep of the family. I did fall a little bit into a career in law. If I look back, or if I ask my mother, she thinks that I was always going to be a lawyer because I had a very, very strong sense of justice, even from a young age. And I had been wrongly accused of spilling some medicine, and I never stopped reminding of my mum that I did not do it.
Oh, where was that? Spilling the medicine?
In Hong Kong.
Really?
In the kitchen, yes. Very vivid memories.
Was that your mother accusing you of that?
Yes.
Oh, goodness. How amazing that stuck with you as a memory. Yeah. Wow, I can see those early days with your parents doing all they could, right, to raise you and working so hard to put you through your schooling, that must have had a massive impact on you.
It is quite defining. I think also because when we had a Chinese takeaway, there's actually a BBC documentary made on the generation of children who served behind the counters at family-run Chinese takeaways, because every day we went to school, and after school we would go to the takeaway, the family business, and we would help out by taking orders. And then in between taking orders, we would do our homework or supervise my sister during her homework. And so I think it just had from a very early age, working hard instilled in us. And I did in high school become quite interested in legal studies and in philosophy and geography, but basically anything that wasn't science and maths. Unfortunately, they were the subjects that we were also always counselled to do. To get a good score to get into university. But I was fortunate, and I did manage to get through a Bachelor of Law and Arts, majoring in Justice Studies and majoring in Security and Intelligence in my arts degree.
Wow, and that was at Queensland University of Technology, yeah?
That's right. And I did volunteer, actually, at Legal Aid during those early years of law school. And I became a little bit disillusioned because I was very interested in the criminal justice systems and crim law, but there was just a lot of sadness in the criminal justice system. And I realized I don't have the stomach in that, dealing with that day in, day out.
Yeah, and I'm hearing you. Keep going. Yeah.
Like a lot of law students, I did become seduced by the power suits and mega deals and crossed over to the dark side of big law. And I was also actually really attracted to the prospects of business travel and, the potential of an international career in law.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Seduced. Seduced. I'm going to go back to that. But I also wanted to go back to you said black sheep. Do you mean that in comparison to your brother and sister who are in medicine?
That's right.
Oh, okay. How do you feel about that now? Do you think you're a black sheep now?
Well,
I don't think you are, but do you think you are?
Yeah, I think we're just very different people, very different interests.
Goodness me. Well, you're talking about the original and initial areas, right, of law where you're working straight after you came out of law school. And that was at Clayton Utes, correct?
Correct.
When you're talking about the seduction into big law, is that where you mean the big law started for you?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I started there as a winter clerk and was fortunate enough to be invited back to take on a part-time paralegal role. And so I through the last 2 years of my law degree, I worked part-time. And Clayton Utes at the time was the biggest law firm definitely in Queensland and one of the top 4 in Australia. And I started my career in the energy and resource sector because Queensland, very much Australia, was at the beginning of the mining boom. And I loved putting on a hard hats and going down, underground and touring refineries and power plants.
Oh my goodness, is that what you did?
Yes. Sitting down with the geologists and engineers or environmental scientists to really understand the mine design or augmentation plans. I loved project development. And there's just real satisfaction I found in working with a large project team to build something together. Through the various roles that followed in my career, I was able to build on those skills and that my love for projects and project development.
Wow, but did you decide to go into that area? Did you know that you wanted to be in that energy and minerals area?
Yes and no. I did a few rotations and I knew I wasn't a litigator. And the compliance work didn't appeal to me. And so my third rotation was in energy and resource. And at the time, as mentioned, it was Australia's mining boom and Queensland was very resource rich. And coal was not a 4-letter dirty word then. And so I was very lucky to be able to score a position in that team because there was a lot of growth, a lot of business there.
Right. So it was a hot area to be in.
Definitely.
And when you were in that rotation, it really appealed to you out of the 3 that you'd been in. So you sort of went to that area then.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, not only was I interested in it, I had, as a young lawyer, pretty big ambitions. And I saw that a career in this booming area was the fastest route to promotion and progression. So I went with it.
Wow, that's amazing. And you went down into the mines. I mean, I've got experience in Japanese companies going to the factory floor and seeing things there and donning the factory outfits. But I think you've just taken it to the higher level by wearing a hard hat and going down into mines. That would freak me out. How did you feel about that the first time you went down there? Were you a bit apprehensive, but once you got there, it was exciting to be speaking with the geologists, etc.?
That's exactly right, Catherine. It is very scary going underground. It's pitch black. It's very, very hot. And then also, it's just huge. These mines are huge, unimaginably big. And, you've got massive trucks going underground. And then going along the way, you see capsules. They're survival capsules. So if anything ever happened, you go in there and there's oxygen and there's supply. So that's quite confronting as well.
Yes, I'd say quite daunting to see that and know that, well, obviously they're prepared for it, but also that something might happen when you're down there. But you're with people all the time, correct?
That's right.
But it must have, what did that teach you, though, about life in general and the fragility of everything? I mean, you're in the middle of somewhere that's massive, but also anything could happen at any time. Did that bring you sort of skills to the way that you worked?
At all times, I felt very, very safe because if you've ever worked for any mining company, safety is number one. And the focus is always about safety, even in a corporate office. It's just instilled in you. walking down the stairs, you have to hold the railings, etc. So I think it's great training.
Great training. Wow. That's something about you I did not know.
Actually, one thing I want to share about going underground is, as you know, I worked for a gold mining company, and I always imagined before going down a gold mine that you would see veins of gold in the walls, but actually you can't see gold at all because gold has to be processed before you can see anything. So all you can see is lumps and lumps of rock. So I was very disappointed when I went down a gold mine.
Right. And you have to know which kind of rock it is that has the gold contained within it, right? So that's the skill, I imagine.
Absolutely right.
Oh my goodness. But it just sort of is a metaphor for life in a way, that some of the things that we can't see that are sparkling underneath are actually covered by perhaps darker, harder materials. So it could be something there that to think about actually for later.
Good one.
Is there someone around this time or anybody around this time that's guiding you through the law as you're moving through this practice at the firm?
Actually, no. I've listened to many of your podcasts, and I've always been very inspired by these amazing women who had mentors. I didn't really have anyone guiding me through my career. I was just very tunnel visioned on succeeding, and that meant partnership. It meant a big house, a fancy car. And I didn't really have anybody who looked out for me from a mental well-being, and also to help me, maybe reassess my goals at different stages of my career.
So you were really just driving towards what you thought was the ultimate pinnacle, to be a partner, but you didn't go through to the partner level, right? You made a change in your life to this travel and coming to Japan. And I'm just fascinated, because if you're thinking about going to partnership and then suddenly, what seems like sudden, but you can tell me, you're coming over to Japan, you're diving off this diving board from Australia into the pool of opportunity into Japan. Tell us about this part of your journey, Angela.
Okay. Actually, it was out of a sense of adventure. So what happened was that after a couple of years, about 5 years at Clayton Utz, working full time, had that under my belt, I wanted to go abroad. Traditionally, a lot of Aussie lawyers, take their careers to the UK, but I've always preferred to walk the road less traveled. And just like the traveler in Robert Frost's poem, it has made a huge difference for me. I can't imagine a different path now. I really wanted international experience that would distinguish me in the crowd. And so I actually wanted to go back to Hong Kong, where I was born. But I never actually made it to Hong Kong because of a little competitive wager that I had with my then boyfriend and now husband. We were both keen to go abroad, and he wanted to come to Japan because he speaks Japanese. So we agreed on whoever scored a job first would decide our destination. So no prizes. I'm guessing who won that wager.
That's so funny. It is very funny, because you just came because he won the wager and he chose Japan.
Yes, and I'd never been to Japan, didn't really speak any Japanese. I had high school Japanese, but it's been tremendous and never looked back.
Wow, that was one of my questions for you, is where you picked up your Japanese, but you had that in school.
Right. I had a couple of years, of just Japanese studies.
Right. So when he won the wager, how did you feel? And what did you think? What was your first thoughts? Oh my goodness, I'm going to Japan. Or was it, oh, this is exciting? What did you think?
Well, I wasn't impressed that I lost, but other than that, I was very excited about coming to Japan. I love exploring new countries. So I also thought that at some stage we would also then make a move to Hong Kong. And I think it's geographically and professionally easy to transition to.
Sure. Yeah. So you came to Japan. Did you have the role at Soljits before you came here, or did you end up looking for a role when you came to Japan?
I did have the role when we landed. I, didn't have any connections to Japan, but one of the partners that my now husband worked for was able to reach out to his network in Japan and secure that secondment or an interview for a secondment at Soljits for me.
Wow, that's amazing. So your husband is a lawyer as well?
He is.
Ah, okay, that's good. Okay, so you came here in 2006 to take up that role. Was that just a 2-year role then, or were you was it just open-ended and you took it for 2 years?
I can't quite remember. I think it was 1 year, and I asked to stay another year. And then the firm was basically like, well, you come back, you will lose your position with us.
So you made the decision to stay on then with your husband here.
That's right.
Right. That's a big decision. And what surprised you then about being in Japan at that time and working in Japan? Were there some things that you can remember at that time that were quite interesting for you?
Just the complete difference in culture. It was my first corporate role. And I know that you've also been at some very traditional Japanese companies, Catherine. At Sojitz, the bells, the morning bells, the lunch bells, the afternoon bells,
yes,
cracked me up for a long time.
Yeah. And I mean, they just control life in Japan, if you think about it, because you still hear them when you're working from home. You can still hear the 5 o'clock bell go out in the neighborhood, right? That it's time to knock off work, everybody. It's 5 o'clock.
That's right.
So you still hear that. But, Sojitz is a massive trading company formed out of 2 companies that were 2 traditional Japanese companies that have been around with long, long histories. So what would you say then, Angela, one of the key successes for working in a big Japanese company like Sojitz? Any tips you can share? Because I think a lot of people would be thinking, gosh, I'd love to work in one of those massive companies. And I know you got the introduction into the company, but staying there 2 years does require you to have a bit of success in the way that you work. So tell us about that. Any key elements you can think of from your experience for success in working in a Japanese company?
Right. Actually, it's interesting you mentioned that Sojit's been a merger of 2 of the oldest Japanese trading company, because it seems to be a bit of a repeating pattern in my career. With Newcrest, when I joined, was also recently had acquired a smaller player to become the second largest gold mining company in the world. And of course, JERA is a joint venture between TEPCO and Chubu. I think that one of the things about working in a Japanese corporation is always to be aware of the culture. It defines a lot about the people, the processes. And when you're working in a company that is so steeped in tradition and brings 2 sets of traditions, that can be hard to navigate. So I've always been humble and listening and understanding about why things might be different to what you might expect them to be, but also not being afraid to speak up. Of course, respectfully question why something is the way they are. It is very important, I think, not to just follow there's the steps in front of you, to follow processes blindly, to question, because you're there to bring value, to contribute, and not a paper pusher. Lawyers are not, certainly corporate lawyers, are meant to be strategic partners, in my view, to the business. And that means understanding the business, understanding the culture of the company, understanding the business strategies of that company. And it often starts with looking inwards at the people and the history of the organization.
I guess between the 2 companies, Nichimen and Nissho EY, that there were different cultures even within the same trading company history, right? So there would be a different culture for both of those. And people who had worked in each of the companies now in the merged and renamed companies still brought with them their own culture from that previous company they were in. I feel that was probably the same when we had Hogan Lovells was made from Lovells and Hogan and Hudson. And we used to have, for the first year or so, there was, are you legacy Hogan Hudson? Are you legacy Lovells? Which one are you? So did you find that was a little tricky for people to get to wearing the brand new suit of the new company and still having the older clothes of the older companies?
Absolutely. I think, Catherine, you've hit the nail on the head. It could often be sensitive, navigating the differences, because each side, the people would feel that they brought the better deal to the table, because that's what they believed in, their corporates. But the new leadership is also very important, and to remind ourselves that we're not to be forward-looking. and that we have to create our own path, and that we're a different organization now, and that we're free to create our own path and not be sort of bound by the previous cultures and way
It's
of
a
doing
release.
things.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
a release. So you can actually, it's actually a gift to you to be starting on the new pathway. And some embrace that and others find that quite hard. But it's really interesting that you say that. Yeah. And then you moved to Mitsubishi Corporation, another iconic brand name in Japan and obviously globally. And you were there as senior legal counsel for 3 years. And although I've been saying these are both trading companies roles, it seems to me that you did a much bigger role at Mitsubishi, where you were the primary foreign legal advisor for 2 of their 8 global business units. And so you were sort of doing a massive stretch, I think, in this particular role. How did you find that role then, leaping from Sojitz, and what motivated you to interview with them and say yes to them and go and work for them? Yeah.
I guess I got a little bit restless at Sojitz, and I wanted to be on the side of the table that was taking the controlling state. And so I looked for a bigger opportunity. And absolutely, the 3 years I had with Mitsubishi Corporation was the highlight of my career. The structure of the legal teams are a little bit different. Also, Mitsubishi is a much larger corporation, but there was a lot more independence and ability to work closer with the business teams. I traveled a lot. I was embedded in the projects teams. I mean, I was seated in the legal team, but I would travel for weeks and on end with the project teams, flying around the world, negotiating projects with contractors, with partners and advisors. So, and also I guess the projects were a little bit bigger and sexier. And I think I was just, because of the general manager that I worked with and the trust that he put in me, I was also given the role of, mentoring younger team members. And that was very fulfilling for me.
How many were in that team and how many did you mentor?
In the legal team at the time, it was easily over 50, but, I worked in probably only 6 to 8 under a general manager. And so basically anyone who on any project, there were always 2 of us, and there would be a junior and me. So I wasn't specifically assigned to mentor anybody in specific, but it was just any junior that worked with me on a project. I would try to help them learn about contracts and to think commercially.
Are you still in contact with those mentees?
A few.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's the whole thing about mentoring, actually, is keeping in touch like that. But wow, what a high-flying job that was, to be traveling around the world and things like that. Did you find that role, Angela, through recruitment companies in Japan, which is a quite typical way to find a job here for people who are listening? But is that how you went about it, or was it also an introduction through friends, which is another way that people find work in Tokyo and in Japan?
Right. It was through my network.
Right. How excellent. Goodness me, that's really amazing. And so you were there for how many years?
About 3 years all up, yeah.
And it was the highlight of your career.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, you had a lot of fun. And I think I also had a lot of fun when I was at Mitsubishi Motors. Maybe there's something about their culture. We had a lot of people working at Mitsubishi Motors who were from Mitsubishi Corporation and from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. But the whole way that they worked just seemed very buoyant and interesting and exciting, and everyone seemed very much into what they were doing. They liked being at work, which I felt very much was obvious in Mitsubishi compared to other companies that I worked in. So you've made me recall that as well. Is that how it was for you? You sort of enjoyed all of that because the people were enjoying their work as well?
Absolutely. I think everybody who worked for Mitsubishi who I met not only were tremendously talented and smart, they were also very proud of being part of Mitsubishi. And I think that's important. At Sojitz too, I keep in touch with a lot of people. They are always also very, very clever people who had, could handle a lot and dealt with a lot and taught me a lot. But I think it was just what stuck with me with Mitsubishi was their reach globally and how everybody was so multilingual and talented.
Yeah, I can see and I understand fully. We can go, I'd love to go further into that, but I want to take you over again from where you were at Mitsubishi because you decided to leave there in 2011, I believe, and come back to Melbourne. That must have been quite a hard decision.
It was actually, but, because my husband at the time was working for Skadden's and I was traveling better part of the year outside of Japan, we wanted to have a change of pace. And actually, the 2011 Fukushima event sort of accelerated that decision.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's where quite a few people I know, especially, well, now I know you, myself, also made critical decisions about life and about what matters in that year of 2011. We will never forget it. So you decided to come back to your home roots for a while, call Melbourne your home roots because it's part of Australia. Come back here, I should say there. I feel like I'm in Melbourne now. You've got me thinking about Australia and looking at the sea. So you came back and is this where you went to the gold mining company?
That's right.
So how long were you there for?
I was there for about 3 years again, or up.
Right.
Which was a great period to learn a completely new industry. And the gold mining and international gold market is quite different to what, coal and oil and gas.
I see. So what was your learnings there? And did you really enjoy that role? Was that an in-house legal counsel role?
It was a in-house legal counsel role.
Is that where the Korea part ties in as well? Or is that separate again? Because you go to Korea or to Seoul before you come back to Tokyo again, right? Am I getting your pathway right?
That's right. That's correct. Korea, it was a bit of a career break. I had a couple of years of career break where I was honing the skill set called motherhood.
There we go. Tell me about that. And that is a massive skill set that you need as well. So that was while you were back in Melbourne.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then also partly in Korea. And
partly in Korea too. Gosh, how did you get to Korea? Was that also with your husband's work?
That was with his work. He was assigned there for a 1 year secondment with the Exchange Bank of Korea.
Right. Was that a coin? That wasn't a coin toss. That was an actual.
No, that was me letting him lead for a little bit.
Okay. And you went with him at that point too?
That's right.
And you started your family at that stage?
We started our family in Melbourne.
Oh, okay. So you took the children or one or two with you?
One, yes.
One. Okay. Wow. My goodness. So you managed to take a child to another country and work there for a year. Well, work there as a mother for a year, right? While you're supporting your husband, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And then you lead yourself again back to Japan. What happens that you get this Japan role again? Because you came back to work. Well, you came back to work in Tokyo and at Allen and Overy.
I think we both really missed Japan and the caliber of the work.
Right. And once it's in your blood, you can't really get rid of Japan, can you?
No, exactly.
So you both looked for roles here then, did you?
We did. Well, actually, my husband was able to transfer his role from Ashurst. He basically just asked to return to Tokyo and they made that happen.
And how did you get your role then? Did you find that after you arrived or were you also searching whilst you were still either in Seoul or back in Melbourne?
I was actually searching even in Korea, but it was very difficult in Korea because we had a clock on our time there and also because they mainly wanted US qualified lawyers. So when we came back to Japan and I was very keen to get back to work, it was quite scary actually, having taken almost a period of time, almost 2 years perhaps off to try to get back into the workforce. And it was an opportunity though to reassess whether I want to pivot into something else, go back to private practice or go to a completely different industry. And I reached out to my network and gradually and eventually I found a role at Allen Overy and was seconded to JERA, which was a really good fit for me.
Right. So that's where it came in. The secondment to JERA then got you your sort of introduction, the door opening to JERA. I was wondering why you went back to private practice and to what you called earlier the dark side. So that's why it sort of led you to JERA. Did you know that the secondment to JERA was coming up before you went to Allen Overy?
I did.
Okay. So that's very much like when I joined Hogan Lovells, I knew that I was on my way to secondment to Mitsubishi Motors. So that's interesting, really interesting. And so you worked there again for another 2 or 3 years. And then did JERA invite you to come and work with them full time?
Yes, absolutely right. I was very lucky to be invited back as a DGC. And of course, I absolutely jumped at the opportunity.
And you came in as Deputy General Counsel as your first role. You weren't any further lower down the queue. You were actually Deputy General Counsel at JERA.
No, that's the role I wanted. And that was what was offered to me.
Really? That's amazing. How does somebody get a role like that? And how do you, for advice for others who might think, how on earth could I go into a company and secure that job at that level from the get-go?
I think it would be difficult if I had not had spent 2 years before that working with my GC, Tagaya-san, and the team. And I think showing him demonstrated how passionate I was about growing a legal team and my interest in the business and my work ethics. I think it's very hard to walk into a DGC role otherwise, but I had worked really well with the team. I think we shared a vision for the future of the team that he would like to grow. I think that's very important to have a vision aligned.
Do you think he was not interviewing you, but maybe possibly interviewing you for inviting you over during the time that you were working on secondment?
Gosh, I was, again, the first secondee into JERA because it's a very young organization and a very, very small team. When I joined, there were 5 people. There was the GC, 2 senior managers and 2 juniors. So since then, we now have a full-fledged secondee program. So I think we both just got lucky.
Right. Well, lucky, yes. Fully fledged secondee programs now in process. So that means you have other secondees coming through. Are they coming from A&O or are they coming from other law firms?
From other law firms. In fact, we haven't had another secondee from Allen Overy, but from a range of all the top international as well as Japanese law firms.
Amazing. So tell us about now your legal group and how many you manage in your team.
In the Tokyo headquarters, our total headcount for the legal group is about 27. And that's the strategic legal function, which advises the business globally and domestically on all of JERA's business across the value chain, as well as our compliance and governance function.
And so you work with all of the departments, all the other departments in JERA across all of the operations?
Absolutely. All of the departments as well as our functions. So we would also advise our tax or our IT teams.
I see. So you're working with various groups and lots of different people across the organization. How are you managing intake of workload and demand across the business? Because you must have quite a fair amount of demand upon you for this kind of work that you're doing. Yeah.
Well, that's a really great question and it's something I'm very passionate about, Catherine. So I'm glad you asked about that. My experience of Japanese corporations is that they are very much steeped in tradition and there are so many layers of decision making and there's a lot of process that are paper-based. And so when I joined JERA, I saw a lot of opportunities to cut out the waste and to improve processes and make things more efficient so that we can deliver a better service as the legal team, compliance team, and the governance team. And I think that, and that's probably one of the reasons perhaps Tagaya-san wanted to work with me on this pursuit of, I think, excellence and efficiency and through modernizing the legal function.
Okay, so he just sounds like to me like a real inspirational leader to have as a GC and it sounds like JERA really chose somebody very significant there. And I know to me, you really seem to truly and love your job right now. I mean, you only joined in September 2019 and gosh, that's only a few months before this coronavirus started and upset the world. And so you've really been there for 2 years, right? You've only just had 2 years, but you've taken on this massive pioneering transformation of the business, improving processes through legal operations. And this is one thing I think that you at JERA are doing differently to all other legal departments that I know of around town. So you recently embarked on this process of assessing people and processes and technology,
right,
and establishing this legal operations support component for your legal group. I've not had anyone on the podcast talk about this, or not really had the opportunity to talk to you a lot about this, but please go into it a bit, perhaps high level, but some of the big ticket items you approached and how you went about this, because it must have been, when I think about it, and I was thinking about it before we talked today, how massive it must have been to get the business on board about all of the things that you've now put in place and are putting in place. So go into that for us, Angela. I'm fascinated to hear a bit more of this story.
Thank you, Catherine. It is something that I'm passionate about and our team is very focused on. And perhaps if we can go to the beginning, we started making very small incremental changes in modernizing just the way we operate, our operating model, and just improving processes. And one of the early examples is we used to have a small robot as an avatar for one of our team members who was based in UK for family reasons. And our team would use that avatar to connect and communicate with her daily. So she has an app on her phone that she can operate, and she can, swipe her screen and make the avatar move. And so she can see across the team, who's in, and her eyes will light up, and, we can go and sit in front of her and talk to her. And that really made a huge difference in communications.
Wow, I'm listening here thinking, what, you worked with an avatar who was a real person in reality, right? A real person in the UK. So that was are you saying that's a small incremental change you made?
Well, it's an innovation for communication.
Definitely innovative. Yes.
People around the company, sit up and take notice because we have this little robot sitting, on the table in our team, which is also important.
Wow. You mean there was an actual robot?
Yes.
How did you get that robot?
It's called Orihime. It's actually a robot that's used in the medical field to help a lot of, I think, aged care and I think young children who are disconnected from society.
Yeah. Yes, I think I've actually seen it now. I'm thinking about it. So how did you get that introduced? I mean, that sounds to you, well, you're saying it's a small incremental thing that changed, but to get a robot into an organization must have been quite a bit of a hurdle, no, to get over?
No, and because it's just a small cost, came out of our own budget. We didn't have to get any IT approval. There were no stakeholders involved. It was something that, was just used exclusively by the legal team. So,
right.
I think starting small is important. We were, piloting a lot of ideas. And then, a key focus, of course, is our knowledge management. And we have a knowledge management focus group that develops precedents and playbooks. And we now even have a dedicated contract specialist. We use AI for processing our high volume but low risk contracts in both English and Japanese. KM projects, we continue to work really hard on standardization because we think that's really important to free up the time of our counsels to focus on, the strategic goals of the business.
Yeah. How much time do you think it's saved you then using AI for these more, I guess, lower level, you're saying, contracts in English and Japanese? Is it 90% of your time, or would it be saving a little bit less than that?
Well, we don't know yet, but it is very important to have metrics that we can measure. But to do that, you need data. And that actually has been what we realized and the game changer for us, as you mentioned. When we looked at our processes, we realized that we had work coming in, work going out, but there was no way to see the volume and the cadence and who was doing a lot of that work and the complexity, the risk level, the value of that work.
And also knowing how busy someone is, or if someone's not got enough work, how to allocate the work between people.
Absolutely. So it was like flying blind. We were just constantly busy and dealing with issues as they come. We weren't able to articulate, the demand on our resources. So we couldn't then articulate a business case for increasing resources.
Right. So you're gathering now the data to show how the AI is helping you, but also how to manage teams. And with that data analysis, that's going to be, again, a game changer, isn't it?
Very much so. I think the very much team management and resource management starts with structured data.
Right. So how has all of this changed the way the team operates and how you communicate with others?
What we have done is introduce we started assessing our processes. And what's really important is to understand all of our pain points and our problems and spend time evaluating those problems and defining what success looks like for the team. And then when you've done that, then you can find the solution, the right solution for your problems. And for us, it was implementing an intake and workflow management program. And this platform allows us to see exactly the volume of work that's coming in for business, the type of work that it is. As I mentioned, those metrics about the complexity, the risk, the value of, and strategic value as well of that work. And so at a click of a finger, we have a dashboard. We can see at any point in time how many live matters we have, and the completion rate, how quickly we're turning around matters. Also, for example, if we can see, say in the last 12 months, we've done 6 mergers and acquisition, and that will then inform decisions about training and development or recruitment. It really is a game changer.
Wow, that's incredible. I would think that other legal teams listening to this would think that they would really love to do this. How would they approach it? And what would you recommend they do? For example, prioritizing the areas that they improve, or, understanding pain points first, exactly what you've just said, going through that process. And then, you've hired somebody in as well. So at what point do you think about the person that you need to bring in to run the operations? So I guess I'm asking you about the advice that others would receive from you that would be very helpful for them to take the similar path that you've driven in your organization.
Probably the place to start is to know what you suck at. I would
Right.
recommend benchmarking. There are a lot of legal ops health checks out there that's available that will give you a baseline and help you to understand what areas and what process you need to improve on. So get some help, and I think understanding your points, weaknesses.
Amazing. So maybe people can contact you at some point to have a bit more of a deeper chat on that. I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing, and we look forward to seeing more about what you're up to as it unfolds over the next years. It's just great. So also, I mentioned at the top that you were an award winner last year in the ALB Japan Law Awards, and you've recently been interviewed. I heard you interviewed on a Curious Lawyer or Crazy Lawyer. I'm not sure.
Crafty Counsel.
Crafty Counsel, that was the one. Excuse me for misnaming it. But how do you then brand yourself as an in-house lawyer? Because you've got, I know at the bottom of your email signature, you have that award mentioned. So even as an in-house counsel, is there a way that you are actively being out there, Angela, branding yourself?
I think unconsciously so. I've been branding myself through things that I'm passionate about. And it is this digitalization of and future-proofing of the legal function. I think the corporate legal departments really need to change and make progress. And in Japan, I think we're maybe perhaps a little slow, but I think corporates, legal departments and CLOs and GCs are all now starting to sit up and take aware of this, the proliferation of legal tech in other parts of the world, and how innovation, it's really driving efficiency and helping legal functions to deliver that greater value to organizations. So that's something I'm passionate about, and starting to, craft a space for myself. But the other aspect is also, reaching out and giving something back through Women in Law in Japan.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Great. That's really, really good advice for lawyers to be thinking about as well, and the way that you can still devote time to branding, even as an in-house counsel and not being private practice, where people always think as a lawyer you need to do all your branding and that it stops once you're in-house. But I can see very well that you're working on that. I'm going to just switch gears a little bit just for some advice to young lawyers and other lawyers, some things that perhaps were said to you or delivered off somebody else's tongue to you that were really helpful for you when you were starting out in your career. And perhaps the other side of that, the flip side, maybe some advice that wasn't the best, worst piece of advice, and how you've handled those two things, if you can think of those.
I said to you before that I didn't really have many mentors in my life, but I did have one person who has been changed my career, completely changed the way that I see myself and the way I define myself. And she was a mentor, very blessed at a particularly difficult stage of my life where I was in a role that challenged me to really dig deep, to be my most resourceful, my most creative, most resilient every single day. And it was really the crucible of my career and made me question my core values, my intellect, my judgment, and my self-worth. And it was just taking a huge toll on me. And I just couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong and, how could I do to fix it? At that time, I had this incredible woman in my life. And I used to meet up with her. I asked her to be my mentor. And we would just meet up actually at a wine bar and talk over glasses of wine. And I remember sharing these issues with her and asking her to help me to do better. I desperately just wanted to understand what I was doing wrong. And when I finished, I still recall she very slowly put down her glass. She leaned towards me and she looked me in the eye and said, "Angela, it's not you, it's him." And those words actually didn't sink in for a long time. And I didn't recognize the bullying and harassment that I was being subject to. And instead, I really internalized them and made them my fault. Over time, I even normalized it and justified it. But it was my mentor who gave me a good hard shake to bring me out of that paralysis and to take action. So my advice, sadly, bullying and harassment is really prevalent in the legal industry, and there are many high-profile examples. So please learn to recognize these behaviors and know that it is not your fault and have the courage to call out those behaviors.
Wow. I'm almost visualizing myself sitting next to you at that wine bar with this person magically taking you, under their wing and saying something quite sternly, right? But also that was necessary, I think, for that particular mentor to say it to you in that way so that you really had it driven home to you that it wasn't you, that it was somebody else who was really inflicting this upon you. My goodness, is this why this advice that you have for young women and the passion that you have in supporting them to be bold young professionals and maximize their potential, is this where this is coming from?
Definitely one of the reasons.
How are you doing that? How are you supporting others to reach that potential and to fight what you've just talked about?
I think it's just every day in my own team through praise, which I think is not often forthcoming in the legal industry and also in the Japanese culture, to praise and recognize junior members, not just females, for good work and for them to build confidence and self-worth. I think that's very important. And also to help them realize their potential by pushing them just that little bit more outside of their comfort zone. So that's what I try to do on a day-to-day basis in my team. But, I think in the last 12 months, I realized that I need to reach out further into the community. And that's why I joined also, the Women in Law Japan, and hopefully expand my network and be able to reach out and reach more young female professions. And within JERA itself, I also help with the diversity and inclusion initiatives and join all of their workshops to, talk to as many people as possible, to inspire them and to let them know that what's out there and that you don't have to choose between a career and a family, which sadly I find a lot of female young professionals in Japan find that they have to choose, that they have to give up their career when they start a family. And I just don't think that's right or true.
Right. And you're showing that through what you do. And are you also speaking about this harassment and bullying aspect that you just mentioned, are you talking to people about that, and are you helping them raise their voice if they come across something like this? How are you helping people in that way? That it sounds like it profoundly affected you, and it's affecting me as I speak with you. So I'm wondering how you're speaking about that to help others.
I haven't, and I would love to actually proactively help support groups. But since that particular part of my life, I have also seen and witnessed bullying and harassment. And I have very actively tried to support the victim to make them understand that it's not their fault and that they're not doing anything wrong, and to give them courage to really break the cycle and to dig deep for that steel, because I think everybody has that steel inside them. And, these events of adversity can often be something that not only defines us, but will, make us, you've heard the saying, whatever doesn't kill us, make us stronger. And that's exactly it. And the learnings will be more acute and have a greater impact because, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor, and we've just got to get through it. But it also requires a tremendous amount of empathy for the people who are subject to that sort of behavior.
Yeah, well, I think we've got to do some more about this and find out how we can bring some more of that strength within you, Angela, to others to really help them through this, because I think it's perhaps a little bit more prolific than what we think. And so I'd like to ask you about traits that you are really most proud of, and I can already hear courage and resilience from you. Are those the kinds of traits that you have that you would call out as being part of you that help you be successful right now?
I think so. And I would say stubbornness, hard work, and never giving up. If I think I deserve something, I will fight to last breath to get what I want. And if I think I don't deserve it, then I will also make sure that it's known.
Right. And if you weren't going to be a lawyer, right, if you were not a lawyer from next year, what would you be?
I think I would like to donate my time to help people, victims.
Well, let's think a bit more about that as we move through next year of Women in Law Japan. And pro bono and other things have come up recently in conversations I've had with people. And so I think we could probably do something with that within the next year.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Is there anything that we've talked about today that you'd like to reiterate or mention again? Or is there something that I haven't traversed with you that you'd like to speak about?
There are a couple of mantras that I would like to share.
Tell us.
I don't watch boxing, but there are two mantras that are from Muhammad Ali that often helps me overcome problems. And the first one is float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I used to be a huge planner, order, certainty, control. I made a list for everything, a list of lists. And it is what we do, right? As lawyers, we get asked, what is your 12-month action plan? What is your 3-year goal? What are your long-term career goals? And I used to think that having a plan was halfway to success. But I have learned that success really, evolves over time. And when we had our firstborn, I learned very quickly that the baby doesn't care what my plan is. And if I was going to make it through the day, I needed to adjust my MO. I had to be resourceful, creative, flexible, and at the same time, I had to establish boundaries for the little person. So applying the learnings from motherhood made me take more choices and chances with my professional decisions. I think having a plan is very important, but also be agile, be graceful, pick your battles. And when you go in for that battle, for that something you want, make sure you strike with precision.
Stinging like a bee.
That's right.
Oh my God, that's so good. Wow, this is amazing. What's the other one? Oh my gosh.
The other one sort of speaks for itself, and don't count the days. Make the days count. It is a reminder that, to rather than focusing on how much longer until I get that promotion that I'm chasing, or how much more training I need to do to be able to run a marathon, to really focus instead on making each day count as it is happening. Because life is pretty overwhelming. And one of my strategies has always been to just cut it down to size, focus on the day that I'm in, what I've achieved in that day. And in life, all we can do is really, our best one day at a time and let the rest come as may.
Oh, Angela, I have goosebumps with you. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad I asked you that question. We're about to wind up. Not that I want to, but we do need to so that everyone who's listening can actually get on with their day. But I do want to finish with the Super Six, the final Super Six, a quick fire round of 6 questions that I ask every guest to wind up the interview. Are you ready to go?
Yep.
All right. So one is around giving you a cash gift and where you would spend it in Japan, your favorite store, destination, and recently a lot of social responsibility and social action topics have come up amongst our guests. How about you, Angela?
Yeah, Catherine, I would invest it. Very boring, but I would invest it and donate the earnings to nonprofits that are dedicated to, lifting children out of poverty, providing access to education, fighting, child labor and trafficking, funding DV shelters. There's just a huge list of social justice issues that I would love to be able to contribute towards. And I think I'm influenced by Kamala Harris. I'm reading her book at the moment.
Yes, I've read her book. It's amazing. It is amazing. Well done. Good. Well, I was going to say, can you share a podcast or a book you are reading? But you're just sharing one then. What's her book called?
The Truths We Hold.
Yeah. And how far through are you?
Final chapters, about 10 of them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's great. So that's amazing. And I was going to also ask you what your favorite saying is, but I've just got 2 gems off you. So tell me then, is there a famous person or celebrity you would love to meet or have met? And perhaps it could have been Muhammad Ali, actually. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. How about it?
Probably somebody who's no longer with us, Muhammad, but probably guess somebody who's alive has to be Kamala Harris, hands down.
Right. Yeah, hands down. I hope she comes to Japan and we can meet her through the American Chamber or somehow. I really hope she comes to Japan. All right. What about what's on your bedside cabinet in your home that inspires you and why?
My bedside table is just an infuser, a box of essential oils and a collection of massage oils. Because I run a lot and I find that I like to wind down by giving my hands or my feet a massage. Nothing really, and just to reflect on the day, I think it's a nice way to relax. Otherwise, your brain just keeps spinning.
Yeah, glorious. It's a way to actually just calm the brain down. I agree with you fully. And I was going to ask you a bonus question, which is something about you that people don't know, but I feel the hard hat in a mine, Angela, could take the cake on that one. But is there anything else that we should know about you that we don't know already?
I talked about marathon running before. I love endurance running. I run on average about 100 kilometers a week.
No way, really?
Yeah, I think running is totally a mental sport. The mind is the athlete. The body just simply, is what it uses to run faster and longer, but it's all in the head.
Wow. Gosh, you're fascinating. That's amazing, Angela. Well, we have actually come to the end of this marathon podcast with you, and I really have enjoyed listening to your, my goodness, super career and also the areas that you've been talking about, which are really deep and sensitive. And I do thank you for going there and combining all of that and amongst also that real sense of adventure and curiosity that you've got in your career and your life so far. Thank you very, very much.
My absolute pleasure, Catherine. And I'm sure that your podcast will keep on winning more awards.
Let's hope. And to that extent, we need people to be listening and also, writing reviews, because apparently that's how it gets done. The reviews are very, very important for people to put on Apple Podcasts or Spotify in order to get the Lawyer on Air podcast out there and heard and listened to by many, many people. But if people want to listen and talk with you a little bit more, Angela, how can they do that? Would that be through LinkedIn or is there some other way to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is the best way, and I would love to share more about what we're doing at Jera Legal with legal operations and digitalization and future-proofing the legal function.
great, because certainly if people follow you on LinkedIn, they can actually see a lot of your posts and shares that have that kind of information. So please do that. And so I will finish it up there. We've had this fantastic conversation about so many things, and I really do thank you for being my 7th guest on season 2 of Lawyer on Air. And I thank you for your openness and honesty. And really, as I just mentioned, people who are listening, please do drop us a short review. That really does help Lawyer on Air be seen and heard by many people. You can even jump onto my website and leave a voicemail. I do love hearing your actual voice telling me how you feel and what you thought about the podcast. So do go ahead, share this episode with someone else who may get some enjoyment from listening to it and be inspired to live a wonderful lawyer extraordinaire life. So that's all for now. See you on the next episode. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now. Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of Lawyer on Air. I really hope that you were inspired by the story you heard and that you discovered something new about women in the law. It's my passion to share my stories of amazing legal ladies, so please subscribe to the show so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you can think of even just one person to share this episode with, that would make my day. I would love to connect with you, so jump on over to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter or Insta, where you can find me. The links are in the show notes below. Well, that's all from me today, and I look forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Lawyer on Air. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now.